Welcome back to Safety Third, where I'm in the middle of an ECU installation in a 1985 BMW 635csi. It's the E24 chassis, and before the end of the video we will have this thing on a dyno and get some numbers for you. But regarding the installation, the wiring's complete, the hardware is complete, the software is rough, but it's running. However, during the intro video, you may have heard some rattling going on with the transmission clutch system. When I engage the clutch, it kind of has a rattling. And when I disengage the clutch, it goes away. So there's something not quite right. I want to look at the clutch transmission, see if there's anything obvious with it. Before I take it to the dyno and have it tuned and maybe waste some money if the transmission's not working correctly. So before we get going, let's get the transmission, let's get up in the air, get the transmission out, see if anything's wrong with it, and then go from there. Alright, since I have to take the transmission out anyway to figure out what that noise is, I'm going to go ahead and fix something that's kind of been bugging me since I put this transmission in. It's this play. That is way too much play. That's fifth gear there, the detent, and that's first. So here to there, that's all play. People are going to say it's the selector joint that's got play in it. No, it's not. This is the second brand new selector joint I've had in here. I thought it was the selector joint. Obviously it's not. I think something's wrong with the shift rod. Maybe the connector into the shift rod is hogged out and there's some play there or something, but I need to figure out what's causing that. So that's first, that's reverse, so first, third, so all this is third, and that's the fifth gear detent. So fore and aft, it's actually really good. It's actually pretty short. This is an E36 M3 shift rod, so it's got a longer bottom end to it, so it's a nice and short throw, but side to side there's just some sort of play. And what I'd like to do is actually modify the shift rod as well to bring the shifter back to this position. The E24 original stock rod, or E28 as well, it's got a bend in the shifter, so it brings it more toward me, kind of down and to the left. But this E36 M3 kind of pushes the knob more toward the radio. So when I have the transmission out and I'm fixing this play issue, I'm going to try to see if I can bend this or modify the original to give it a short throw that this one has, but pull the knob back to where it should be. Alright, time to remove the transmission. So this is the transmission. It looks fine. It's not making any weird noises. There's nothing loose in here. Throttle bearing is brand new. Well, I'll say brand new. A year or two old. It feels and sounds fine as well. So I have no idea what that rattling noise was or grinding. This is a little warm, but not a big deal. Don't know. Nothing's loose. Nothing's rattling. A little bit of play, maybe a little bit, but nothing bad. Guess I'll just put it back in and hopefully magically it'll stop making the noise, but nothing obvious here, nothing loose. Don't know. Okay, I found out what the play was in the selector rod. Put a little black mark on the shift rod in there, and the selector joint is here. Look at the difference. Look at the play in that. So is obviously where the issue is. I think the hole that goes into the selector rod, I think it's been hogged out by the previous owner. I got this used, obviously. So what I'm going to do is take the selector joint out. I'm going to drill a hole that's larger than the one that's in here now, just to kind of make it circular again. Maybe put this pin in here is a 6mm pin. I'll probably just, like I said, drill it out to an 8mm or 8mm hole or a bolt or something and get rid of that play there. I don't know if you can make that out, but that hole is a little oblong. The pin that goes in there is 6mm, exactly, it's like 5.99. And I measured the inside this way, and it was 6 1/4. And I'm sorry, this way was 6 1/4, this way is 6 3/4. So it's been hogged out or worn somehow. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and drill that out to maybe a 7mm and find a corresponding bolt and just cut the head off the bolt and use that as my new pin. Okay, I'm finished drilling. I ended up using a 9/32 drill bit. It was just a little bit larger than the original hole, the oblong hole that was in the original shift pin. I was originally going to find a bolt that fit in here perfectly, but what I'm going to do is just sacrifice this drill bit, and it'll be my hardened dowel pin. I'll cut it off 22 mil long, which is the original length of the original dowel pin. So I'll just cut this off and use it as my new pin. And here's the play now. So that's it. That's the play. So that's 5th gear, 1st gear. So there's hardly any now. So that was definitely the issue. Fix that, on to the next one. Here we are back at the workbench. I've got the 2 shifters laid out. This is the M3 E36 shifter that was in the car. Here's the one that came with the transmission. You can see how short that lever is there compared to this one. That's what makes it a short throw shifter. And look at the angle between the two. So it's a big difference in this coming back toward the rear of the car. Also, I don't know if it's, you can kind of see how it comes back toward the driver too a little bit. So, see if I can modify this one to put a longer shift arm on there. To modify the shifter, I didn't take any video, I just took a couple pictures. Essentially, I just cut off the cylindrical connecting point that goes to the shift rod. I got a 3/8 inch drill bit and drilled out about 3/4 of an inch into the pivot ball, about 3/4 of an inch deep. Then I went to Home Depot and got some 3/8 inch rod and had a friend TIG weld it to the cylinder that I cut off. I thought TIG welding would be better just to kind of control the heat through that area. And then I just put, instead of welding the rod into the ball, I just put some JB Weld in there. I figured there's no force pulling that rod out. It's just mainly a back and forth kind of a torque on that ball. So JB Weld should be more than strong enough. And so I put JB Weld in the hole, put the rod in the hole, and then I assembled everything underneath the car, and I put zip ties between the shift rod and the shift linkage itself, just to make sure the rod didn't come out as the JB Weld was setting. And then I went up into the car and kind of rotated the shift knob to the rotation I wanted to make sure the shift pattern on the knob was straight. And then I just let it cure overnight, and I've been using it for a few days now, and it seems to be okay. Okay, the transmission is back in the car. You can see that the play in the shift knob is a lot less using that drill bit. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And that's the 5th gear detent, 1st gear detent, and then reverse. So that's the play right now. It used to be. I'll do a side-by-side video, but this is it now. And notice the shifter location is a lot more toward me, which is easier to reach rather than being up here like it was before. So changing that ball really helped out. And actually it's a nice short shift too, even shorter than the E36 M3 shifter, so that's a lot better. Alright, success. Alright, so the transmission's back in the car. Good news and bad news. Good news is it wasn't the transmission making the noise. The bad news is it's the ECU and how it's programmed. So let me show you what it's doing. Alright, the engine's running. It's a little rough. Not bad. It doesn't quite sound right. Here's why. Coil number 2. No difference. Coil number 4. No difference. Number 6. It's running on 3 cylinders. It's not firing 2, 4, or 6 in the right sequence. So if you notice, or if you know that the firing order is 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. So it's only firing 1, 5, and 3. It's not firing 6, 2, and 4. So the second half of the combustion cycle, it's not even firing. Okay, so after a few emails back and forth with ECUMaster, I've determined what's going on with the engine. Apparently the primary trigger drop-down menu I was using for my settings, I was using the BMW E30 M3 116 teeth drop-down for the trigger type. Because I was using 116 tooth flywheel signal to send to the ECU, I thought I could just use that drop down one. Apparently you can't use that because that drop down setting, there's something going on in the background with the software settings, and you cannot run a 6-cylinder BMW off that drop down. So you'll have to use something else. I think I've got something in mind. I'll probably just use a later trigger type, a multi-tooth trigger type trigger wheel. I need to do some additional investigation and get some parts, but you cannot use that drop down setting. That's why it's only running 1, 5, and 3 and not 6, 2, and 4. Something about the software settings for that drop down won't allow it to run this engine in this sequential inline 6 setup. So I need another plan. Okay, well, this is going to be the solution to getting the ECUMaster the proper trigger to run the motor correctly. Just as a reminder, I'm running the stock setup to currently send the signal or the trigger signal to the ECUMaster, which is a 116 tooth signal from the flywheel. I'm using a variable reluctance sensor to send that to the ECUMaster right now, and it just doesn't like it. It doesn't, using this setup, it doesn't actually know where the crank top dead position sensor is. So it just doesn't know which order in the sequence it is. That's why it's only firing the first 3 in my sequence of firing order. It's just doing 1, 5, 3, and it's not doing 6, 2, 4, which is the second half of the cycle. So what we need to do is get the proper trigger to the ECUMaster, which means it needs to know where the crank top dead center is, which is currently the way I'm running it off the stock sensors. It's not getting that signal. So what you need to do, or at least what I need to do for this situation, if you've got an older M30 like this is get a newer model M30 B35 trigger wheel. It's on the front of the crank. Those newer M30s, I think they started in 88, 89, is when they started running the new Motronic 1.3 DME, or ECU. And what that motor did was actually use a trigger wheel on the crank that actually has 60 teeth -2. And so what this does is gives a signal to the ECU as to not only speed of the motor with these 60 teeth here, but the -2 actually gives it an additional signal, meaning that's where top dead center is, or in reference to this gap here. So this is what you need to pick up to get this older M30 to work correctly. These are about $150 on eBay. I was lucky enough to find a salvage yard near me that actually had an 89 735i that had the new Motronic DME and the newer model M30. So I just went over there and picked this up for 25 bucks. You'll also need to get the bracket, the sensor bracket that goes with this trigger wheel as well. Just pull it off the car if you're in the salvage yard. This will be able to allow you to mount your sensor to the car to get the proper trigger signal. This is the one that I just took off the car. You'll see it doesn't have any teeth, so you'll have to put this one on. It's the same size, same bolt pattern. It's a good swap out. And here's the old bracket that I had on mine. It's completely different, so make sure you do pick up the new bracket, sensor bracket from the newer model M30. All right, so let's put this on, see if it works. Okay, everything's back together. I ended up getting a brand new variable reluctance sensor for the 735i, which is where I got this trigger wheel from. It was actually a plug and play for the variable reluctance trigger I had on the 116 tooth on the back of the crank, or sorry, the back of the bell housing. Just unplugged that one and plugged this new one in. It was real straightforward, no rewiring at all. Everything's back together. It looks like it's lined up and spaced correctly. Let's see if it works. Okay, I've been playing with it with the new trigger wheel setup. I've adjusted, using my timing light, adjusted the timing on I know what the timing is up front, put it in here. I've also messed with the first trigger tooth. We need to tell it what trigger tooth is essentially corresponding to top dead center for the crank. I think I've set everything up. It's cranking okay. I'm getting a good scope signal for both the cam sensor as well as the crank sensor. So let's see if it works. Very smooth. Guess that was it. That is really smooth. Not quite set right, but sounds really good. Alright. Okay, I've been driving around for the past few days, running the auto-tune feature in the software. You can actually log a lot of parameters while you're driving, run it through the system. The system will actually suggest different changes to the VE table based on those parameters that you're logging. So I've done that. It's running fairly okay. Luckily, a lot of the settings that I had for the previous trigger type were still valid. I just needed to set a different, basically a 0 point for that new trigger that I put in here. So that's all set up. It's running fine. Tomorrow, go get it tuned, put it on the dyno and get some numbers, finally. Well, here we are. Trackstar Motorworks going to get the thing dynoed this morning. We'll get it strapped up and we'll get Ethan to look at it. Ethan's the owner of Trackstar, so we'll get him to tune the dyno and get everything set up. So here we go. Let's go. All right, she's strapped to the dyno. We'll see how it goes. We're looking for close to 200 horsepower, hopefully. But she's running good. We'll see how it works. Well, that's it. Project's done. Got the ECU tuned. Car feels great. I've been driving it for the past couple days. There is so much usable torque now. It feels like a completely different engine. We ended up with 210 horsepower and 241 foot-pounds of torque at the wheels. And actually, what's best about that graph is the dyno graph is that if you look at it, I've got over 200 foot-pounds of torque from about 2,200 to 5,200 RPM. So this thing feels so great when you drive it. In any gear, it pulls. You know, that torque feels really great. But the question's going to be, was it worth it? I picked up, I think, 24-ish horsepower. Now, I don't know since it was a different dyno, I don't know how relative it is, or if it's actually 24 horsepower just in the general range. But it feels like I did pick up, 15, 20 horsepower between the manual transmission swap and the ECU install and the proper dyno tune. But let's look at the numbers on how much it cost. So if you add all that up, it's $1,700. Now $1,700 divided by what, 25 horsepower? That's not bad. That's $68 a horsepower. Sounds a little high, but the drivability of this thing is much better. With the old ECU, it used to lose power around 4,000, 4,500. I don't think the timing was right. The air-to-fuel ratio was probably all wrong as well. But this pulls straight through to red line. It feels so linear, so great. So for me, $1,700 was definitely worth it. Guess that's it. Nothing else. Into the project. I hope you learned something. And until next time, we'll see you later.